No alien suitor chose the young princess. Until a human came forward, the young princess stood on the wide balcony of the palace, looking down at the great courtyard below. Hundreds of alien nobles had gathered, each wearing bright, shimmering robes that reflected their status and wealth. Ships hovered above the city in orderly formations, their engines humming a low song that marked the importance of the ceremony. Today was supposed to be the day when a worthy suitor would come forward and pledge to marry her. But the princess knew in her heart that no one wanted her. She had been told this quietly, many times in whispers and looks. She lacked the rare biological trait that alien nobles prized in their royal brides. For her species, it was almost as if she were incomplete. Despite the whispers, the princess held her chin high. Her dark eyes, bright and clear, scanned the crowd, but there was no warmth there, only the cold glances of curiosity, judgment, and in some cases, ridicule. She had learned to mask her disappointment with a calm smile, one that hid the hurt inside. Many of her attendants had begged her not to show herself in public, but she had refused. If she was to be shunned, she wanted it to be done openly, so that no one could claim she had hidden from her fate. She would face the world, even if the world turned away from her. The first suitor approached. He was a tall, muscular alien with blue-scaled skin and 3 glowing eyes. His voice boomed as he spoke to the crowd, promising loyalty and honor to the princess. But when he looked at her, his expression faltered. He shook his head slowly, muttering something that only his closest advisors could hear. The crowd murmured as he stepped back, bowing perfunctorily before leaving the stage. The princess did not flinch. She had expected this. One by one, alien nobles stepped forward, each more impressive than the last in appearance, rank, and wealth. Each one left with the same silent refusal. Some whispered about her lack of the trait, others said she was too kind, too cautious, or too independent. In every case, the rejection stung, but the princess remained composed. By the time the sun had reached its zenith, the courtyard was nearly silent. The alien nobles had grown bored. Some had begun to whisper among themselves, making jokes at her expense. The princess could feel their eyes on her, judging her not for who she was, but for what she lacked. Her father, the emperor, watched from a raised platform above the balcony. His face was a mixture of disappointment and concern. He had ruled for decades, and in his experience, a royal marriage was a tool for alliances, power, and peace. But now, after countless suitors had rejected her, he wondered if the empire itself would suffer because of one child's difference. From the edge of the courtyard, a small delegation arrived. Their ships were humble compared to the majestic vessels of the alien nobles. Their uniforms were simple, practical, and far from regal. Humans, the crowd whispered, and the whispers carried tones of condescension. Humans were new to this part of the galaxy, untested, and considered weak. Their technology was nothing compared to that of the alien empires. Their diplomacy had little weight, and their presence here was unexpected. Most of the nobles turned their attention away, dismissing the humans before they even stepped forward. But the princess's eyes lingered. She had heard stories of humans, a species underestimated by most, but known for courage, ingenuity, and resilience. She had never met one before, but something about them drew her attention. A human officer stepped out from the small group. He was neither tall nor especially imposing, but there was a calm confidence in his movements. He did not bow low or display any of the formal gestures the aliens expected. Instead, he walked steadily toward the stage, his eyes fixed on the princess. The crowd gasped. A human had no right, no claim, and certainly no status. And yet he approached with a quiet dignity that was impossible to ignore. The whispers grew louder. Who did he think he was? How could a human challenge the centuries of tradition in the court of the emperor? The human stopped before the princess and bowed slightly, not a deep, exaggerated bow, but one of respect. "Your Highness," he said, his voice clear and steady, "I come not to claim you by law, tradition, or politics. I come to speak as one who sees you as a person, not a title." His words were simple, yet they carried weight. The princess's heart skipped a beat. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Not her tutors, not her attendants, not even the alien nobles who had come to reject her. She found herself leaning forward slightly, listening with an intensity she could not hide. The alien nobles erupted into murmurs and shocked exclamations. Some laughed, assuming it was a joke or a trick. Others were furious. A human had no right to approach the princess, let alone speak to her directly. The emperor's brow furrowed. He had expected the human to fail, to embarrass himself, and to leave the princess humiliated once again. But the human remained calm, his gaze unwavering. He did not glance at the crowd, nor did he react to their gasps. His eyes stayed on her, and in that gaze was a strange combination of honesty, courage, and empathy. "Why are you here?" demanded one of the nobles, his voice sharp and loud. "This is not your world, human. You have no claim, you cannot." "I do not seek a claim," the human interrupted gently. "I seek only to understand. I have seen the judgment cast upon you, princess, and I cannot ignore it. I see strength, intelligence, and courage in you, qualities that matter far more than a trait some think is required for marriage. I wish to honor you, not to take anything from you." The crowd fell silent. The words were alien in structure and meaning. Few could grasp the human's intent. To some, it sounded like arrogance. To others, a quiet defiance that could not be ignored. The princess felt a warmth in her chest she had never known. Finally, someone spoke for her, not because they wanted to control her, not because they saw her as a tool for politics, but because they saw her as a person worthy of respect. The emperor cleared his throat, his deep voice echoing over the courtyard. "Explain yourself, human. What is your purpose here?" "I have come forward because no one else has," the human said simply. "I cannot change your customs or your rules. I do not ask for your permission or for approval. I ask only to be heard. I see the princess not as a subject or an object, but as someone whose life matters. If you would allow it, I wish to demonstrate that humans value courage, kindness, and wisdom above all else. If that is not enough for your court, I accept the judgment of your people. But if it is, then perhaps the princess and I can discover a new path together." The words hung in the air. Even the wind seemed to pause. No one had spoken like this in the court for centuries. The aliens, used to formal speeches about status, wealth, and power, found themselves confronted with something they had no frame of reference for. The nobles whispered urgently, exchanging glances filled with confusion, fear, and curiosity. Some muttered that the human was mad, others that he was brave beyond reason. And in the quiet that followed, the princess felt a spark of hope ignite within her, a small flame that had been extinguished by rejection, shame, and loneliness. She stepped forward slightly on the balcony, letting her gaze meet his. There was no fear in her eyes, only a cautious curiosity. "You speak boldly, human," she said. "You claim to see me for who I am. Why should I believe you?" The human did not flinch. He took a small step closer, careful to respect the distance dictated by ceremony, and spoke with calm sincerity. "Because I do not seek to benefit from you, princess. I do not see you as a means to an end. I see you as a person, equal in worth to anyone else here. That is why I have come forward." The emperor's brow tightened. He had faced rebellion, betrayal, and wars across the stars, but he had never encountered a human. And yet, as he looked at the officer standing calmly before his daughter, he felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Respect, perhaps, or recognition of a courage unlike any he had seen before. The princess herself felt a shiver of possibility. For the first time in her life, she considered that maybe, just maybe, there could be someone who valued her for herself, not for what she lacked. The crowd was no longer laughing. The whispers had died down into tense silence. Even the nobles who had once turned their backs on her now watched, unsure of what to do. The human officer waited patiently, knowing that silence could speak as loudly as words. The princess found herself thinking of the countless times she had felt invisible, unwanted, and alone. Now, for the first time, someone had stepped forward, not to claim her but to see her. That simple act, human in its nature, felt revolutionary. Finally, the emperor nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Very well," he said. "You may speak further. Let the court witness what a human considers worthy of respect." A murmur passed through the crowd. Some gasped, some frowned, but all eyes were on them. The human officer bowed his head slightly to the princess and began to speak about things the aliens rarely considered. The strength of character, the power of empathy, and the courage to act even when others falter. He spoke of teamwork, of taking responsibility, and of valuing life above all else. His words were simple, yet they carried a force that made many in the crowd uncomfortable. Their traditions, their centuries-old hierarchies, seemed suddenly fragile and incomplete. The princess listened, her mind and heart opening in ways she had never imagined. She had been trained to expect rejection, humiliation, and the cold eyes of those who only valued appearance and status. But here, a being from another world, a human, spoke with clarity, honesty, and respect. And in doing so, he gave her something she had long thought impossible: hope. By the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the courtyard, the human officer had finished speaking. He bowed again, acknowledging the court without arrogance, and stepped back to his delegation. The princess felt a strange mixture of relief and anticipation. The day had begun with rejection and shame, but now it ended with possibility. She did not know what the future held, or whether the human's actions would be accepted fully by her people. But she knew one thing: someone had chosen to see her as she truly was, and that choice mattered more than any alien tradition. As the crowd slowly dispersed, whispering still in shock and confusion, the princess turned to her father. The emperor's eyes held a mixture of pride and concern. "Father," she said softly, "perhaps there is more to the galaxy than we have been taught to value." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Perhaps there is," he admitted. "Perhaps we have much to learn even from humans." And for the first time in her life, the princess allowed herself to smile, not a mask of composure, but a real smile, small and bright, full of cautious hope. Somewhere among the stars, a new possibility had emerged, and for the first time, she felt that the world might not reject her after all. The day after the ceremony, the palace was quieter than usual. The courtyard, which had once echoed with the murmurs of alien nobles, was now calm. The princess walked through the corridors, her mind still replaying the words of the human officer. He had not come to boast, to take power, or to demand status. He had come simply because he had seen her. That was a concept almost alien to her people. She had grown used to being ignored, dismissed, and measured only by traits she did not possess. Yet now, a human had seen her courage and intelligence, and valued it. Her attendants noticed the change immediately. The princess's posture, once tense with the weight of expectation and rejection, was more relaxed. Her steps were confident, not because she believed the court had suddenly changed, but because she had begun to believe in herself. For centuries, her species had been trained to obey rules and traditions that placed worth above character. But she had glimpsed another way, and it felt liberating. The human officer had been invited to remain at the palace, not as a suitor yet, but as an observer. The emperor had made the decision quietly, aware that letting the human leave might cause unrest among other nobles, who would see the princess's approval of him as scandalous. By keeping him close, the emperor could maintain control while allowing events to unfold. The human accepted this arrangement with humility. He did not seek privilege or ceremony. He simply followed orders, learned quickly about the palace and its customs, and spent much of his time observing the princess and the court. Despite his calm, many in the palace were uneasy. Alien nobles whispered in corners, doubting that a human could survive the social, physical, and political tests of the empire. They expected him to fail, and some secretly hoped he would. To them, the idea of a human marrying a princess was absurd, yet the emperor said nothing. He watched silently, curious to see if this human truly was different. The first true test came unexpectedly. The emperor had ordered a demonstration of the palace's ceremonial defense drones, meant to show the power and sophistication of their military. These drones were complex machines, each capable of remarkable precision and strength, but they required careful coordination to operate. Many alien nobles were confident that the human would struggle. When the demonstration began, one of the drones malfunctioned. Instead of moving in a controlled pattern, it spun erratically, endangering the surrounding area. Noble guards hesitated, unsure how to respond. Panic spread quickly, and the crowd murmured anxiously. The princess watched, her heart racing. She knew the drones were dangerous. Many of the nobles were trained to command them, yet they froze under pressure. The human officer stepped forward calmly. He analyzed the drone's behavior, noting its irregular movements. Unlike the aliens, who relied on tradition and instinct, he applied observation, reasoning, and quick problem-solving. With clear, concise commands, he guided the malfunctioning drone back under control. The courtyard erupted into shocked applause, though some nobles tried to mask their surprise. The princess felt a surge of admiration. The human had faced a challenge alien to his species and succeeded where many experts had faltered. He had not relied on strength or social status, but on intelligence and composure. Over the next few days, more trials followed. The human was assigned tasks that seemed impossible for someone untrained in alien technology. Each time he approached the challenge with patience and ingenuity. He did not boast, complain, or seek recognition. Instead, he focused on understanding the systems, adapting, and solving problems efficiently. The princess observed quietly, noting the stark contrast between him and the alien suitors who had rejected her. Those nobles had been measured by appearances, titles, and birthright. The human, by contrast, relied on courage, thought, and empathy, the very qualities her people had overlooked in her. The court's reaction was mixed. Some nobles began to whisper among themselves, begrudgingly acknowledging the human's capability. Others grew jealous, afraid that their own status would diminish if a human succeeded. Yet no one could deny what they had witnessed. The emperor remained silent but attentive, his gaze shifting frequently between the princess and the human. He seemed to recognize that something significant was unfolding. The princess, meanwhile, began to spend more time with the human in private. She asked questions, not about politics or status, but about his world, his species, and his ways. She learned that humans valued collaboration over hierarchy, empathy over appearances, and action over words. They trusted each other through deeds, not rituals or birthright. She was fascinated. For her entire life, she had lived in a society where worth was measured by things she did not possess. Now she saw a different perspective, one where her intelligence, kindness, and courage mattered. One afternoon, the human led the princess to the palace's training grounds. Several alien nobles were gathered there, demonstrating martial skills and agility. The human had never trained with their weapons before, yet he observed quietly and learned quickly. When asked to participate, he approached the exercises not with raw strength but with strategy. He anticipated movements, adapted rapidly, and worked alongside others to complete the task successfully. The princess watched, amazed at how he approached challenges with calm, logical thinking. He was not stronger in the traditional sense, but his mind and actions made him formidable. This display did not go unnoticed. The alien nobles, who had once scoffed at the human, now murmured among themselves in uncertain tones. Some still resisted the idea of him as a suitor, but they could not deny his competence and courage. A few began to reconsider the meaning of strength and value. The princess felt hope stirring more deeply. Perhaps her people could learn from humans, and perhaps she herself could find someone who respected her fully. The human's influence extended beyond trials and demonstrations. He spoke kindly to servants, helped injured attendants, and offered solutions when palace systems failed. His actions were consistent with his words. Humans valued life, action, and integrity above all else. The princess found herself drawn to his character, but she also realized something more profound. His presence challenged the court's rigid rules and showed that worth could not be measured by titles, wealth, or biology alone. A week later, an unexpected emergency occurred. A minor explosion in the palace's energy core caused power fluctuations, threatening to disable security systems and endanger the guests who remained in the palace. Panic spread quickly. Noble guards hesitated, unsure of what to do. The princess knew that if the situation escalated, the palace could be badly damaged and lives could be lost. The human officer moved immediately, coordinating with engineers, guards, and attendants. He assessed the problem, issued precise instructions, and personally intervened where needed. The princess joined him, assisting with communication and providing guidance from her knowledge of the palace layout. Together, they stabilized the situation. The alien nobles who had watched from a safe distance were stunned. They had trained for years, yet they had hesitated when faced with danger. The human had acted decisively, calmly, and effectively, saving both the palace and the lives of many nobles. The princess realized in that moment that this human had not only the courage to act, but also the intelligence and empathy to guide others in a crisis. The emperor, who had observed the events from a high chamber, felt a mixture of pride and astonishment. He had expected the human to fail, to prove unworthy, and to embarrass the princess. Instead, the human had succeeded repeatedly, showing courage, wisdom, and honor. The emperor could not deny the impact the human had made. Even the most skeptical nobles were beginning to murmur in respect, though some remained cautious, reluctant to accept change so quickly. After the emergency, the princess found a quiet moment with the human. She looked at him thoughtfully, her eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and admiration. "You do not belong here," she said softly. "Your people are far from this galaxy. You are not part of our customs. And yet you act as if it all matters, as if our traditions do not define what is important. Why do you care?" The human met her gaze calmly. "I care because you matter," he said simply. "Not because of your title, not because of customs, not because of politics, but because of who you are. I have seen strength in you, intelligence in you, and courage in you. That is what matters. That is why I am here." The princess felt a warmth in her chest, a sensation she had never felt before. No one had ever spoken to her with such honesty. No one had ever acknowledged her worth simply because of her character. The human's words were simple, yet they carried a truth that resonated deeply. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that she could be valued for who she truly was. Word of the human's actions and words spread quickly through the palace. Servants whispered among themselves, guards exchanged impressed glances, and even the alien nobles began to reconsider their judgments. Some were still reluctant to accept change, but many could not ignore the fact that a human, new, underestimated, and physically different, had proven courage, intelligence, and compassion far beyond their expectations. The princess felt a sense of hope she had never known. For the first time, she imagined a future where she could choose someone not for their status or their biology, but for their character and heart. She realized that humans, despite being new to this galaxy, carried values that her people had overlooked for generations. And she knew that in the human she had found someone who saw her as she truly was, not incomplete, not defective, but strong, intelligent, and worthy. As evening fell over the palace, the sun casting long shadows across the courtyard, the princess stood once again on the balcony. She watched the stars begin to appear, tiny points of light in the vast sky. The human officer stood nearby, quietly observing the same sky. The day had begun with tension, doubt, and the usual whispers of rejection. It had ended with hope, courage, and the possibility of something new, something that could change not only her life but the traditions of her people. The princess turned to him, a small smile forming on her lips. "Perhaps," she said softly, "there is more to this galaxy than I have been taught to see." The human nodded. "There is always more to learn," he replied. "And sometimes the most important lessons come from unexpected places." For the first time, the princess felt a spark of excitement. The world was changing, and she was no longer powerless to shape her own destiny. With the human by her side, she began to imagine a future filled not with rejection and shame, but with courage, understanding, and hope. And somewhere deep within her, she felt the quiet stirrings of something extraordinary, a connection that transcended species, tradition, and expectation. It was the beginning of a story that would not only challenge the court but redefine what it meant to be valued, to be worthy, and to be seen. The palace had returned to its usual rhythm, yet tension lingered in the corridors. The alien nobles still whispered behind closed doors about the human officer. Some admired his courage and intelligence, while others resented him for challenging centuries of tradition. The young princess walked among them, aware of the growing divide in her court. She had come to trust the human, not because of his status or strength, but because of his actions, his thoughtfulness, and his respect for her as a person. Yet she also knew that the court would not allow this situation to continue unchallenged. It began quietly at first. Sensors in the palace's outer energy grid detected unusual fluctuations. Initially, engineers dismissed the readings, assuming it was a minor technical problem. But soon, the warning lights became impossible to ignore. A storm of cosmic radiation was approaching the planet at an unusually rapid pace, threatening to overload the palace's power systems and disrupt the life support networks of the surrounding city. The court panicked. Nobles whispered frantically, their elegant robes fluttering as attendants rushed to relay messages. The emperor appeared in the central chamber, his expression grave. He knew that if the storm struck with full force, the palace itself could be damaged, and thousands of lives would be in danger. The human officer moved quickly. While others hesitated, he began coordinating the engineers and palace guards. His voice was calm and clear, issuing instructions that were precise yet simple enough for all species to follow. The princess joined him, her mind racing to anticipate problems and assist wherever she could. Together, they moved through the palace with efficiency and purpose. The human observed the systems carefully, identifying weak points in the energy shields and redundancies that could be activated to prevent catastrophic failure. He communicated clearly, assigning tasks to the guards, engineers, and attendants based on their strengths. The alien nobles watched from safe platforms above, some curious, others skeptical. They had expected the human to falter under pressure, as many newcomers often did when faced with alien technology and customs. Yet here he was, calmly organizing a response that others had not even conceived. His actions were deliberate but adaptable, responding to new problems without panic. For the first time, some nobles realized that strength was not only physical or based on rank. It could come from clarity of mind, courage, and the ability to act under pressure. As the storm approached, the palace began to shudder under the incoming radiation. Energy surges caused alarms to blare, and the lights flickered ominously. A minor shield malfunction caused a containment unit to begin leaking, threatening critical systems. Engineers froze, unsure of how to respond. The human officer did not hesitate. He identified the problem, climbed into the unit himself, and stabilized it with improvised adjustments while guiding others through the repairs. Sparks flew and the heat was intense, yet he worked methodically, unafraid of danger. The princess followed closely, assisting by coordinating personnel and relaying information. She moved quickly through areas where other nobles would not dare go, her trust in the human giving her courage. Together, they created a chain of action that began to stabilize the palace systems. Guards who had been idle followed their lead, inspired by the calm decisiveness of the two humans in a world of panic. The crowd of alien nobles watched in stunned silence. Then the unexpected happened. A secondary surge struck the outer shield, threatening to collapse the defensive barrier entirely. Panic spread through the palace. Some nobles began shouting orders, contradicting each other, while others fled to safety. The human officer stepped forward again, analyzing the surge. He identified a flaw in the automated response systems, something even the most experienced engineers had overlooked. Without hesitation, he climbed onto a platform to manually reroute energy flows. His actions were precise, guided by logic and observation rather than fear. The princess moved beside him, coordinating the palace systems and assisting in rerouting personnel to safety. The two worked in perfect synchronization, combining human ingenuity, courage, and determination. Hours seemed to pass like minutes as they fought against the storm. Sweat dripped from their faces, their hands grew tired, but neither wavered. Every decision mattered, every action could prevent catastrophe. Slowly, the surge began to stabilize. Lights flickered back to normal, alarms quieted, and the shields held. The storm passed with minimal damage, and the palace was safe. Silence followed the crisis. The alien nobles, who had expected chaos and human failure, could only watch in awe. The human officer had acted decisively, courageously, and wisely, saving the palace and thousands of lives. For the first time, the emperor allowed himself to show his pride. He had seen many individuals prove themselves in battle or diplomacy, yet few had displayed such courage and clarity under pressure. The young princess turned to the human, her eyes bright with admiration and relief. "You saved the palace," she said softly, her voice trembling. "And yet you did not seek recognition. Why?" The human smiled faintly, exhaustion clear on his face. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "No one should be left in danger when they can be helped. We are responsible for each other, no matter who we are or where we come from." The princess considered his words carefully. They were so different from anything she had heard in her court. Alien nobles often spoke of duty in terms of politics, loyalty, and honor, but rarely in terms of compassion and responsibility. Humans, she realized, acted not out of fear, expectation, or reward, but because it was the right thing to do, and the results spoke for themselves. The aftermath of the crisis brought a shift in the palace. Nobles who had once laughed at the human's presence now whispered cautiously among themselves, acknowledging his courage and intelligence. Some were still resistant, clinging to old traditions, but the impact of his actions could not be denied. The princess noticed subtle changes in the way attendants and guards interacted with him. Respect replaced skepticism, and admiration quietly began to spread. The emperor called a council meeting the following day. The human officer was invited to speak, not as a suitor, but as a witness to the palace's trials and survival. He spoke humbly, recounting the actions taken during the storm, emphasizing teamwork, problem-solving, and courage. He spoke not to boast, but to highlight the importance of responsibility and compassion in leadership. His words were simple yet profound, resonating with some nobles and challenging the assumptions of others. The princess watched him closely. She had never felt such pride in another person, nor had she ever felt hope for herself and her people in such a clear way. For centuries, her court had valued superficial traits, ignoring true strength and character. Yet here was a human, new to their world, showing qualities that her society had overlooked. She felt a stirring of excitement and possibility. Even as some nobles remained resistant, a quiet revolution was beginning in the court. Discussions shifted from status and biology to competence, courage, and integrity. The human officer had not sought to change traditions. He had only acted according to his values. And in doing so, he had challenged the court's perception of what was truly important. That evening, the princess found herself walking through the palace gardens with the human officer. The air was cool, and the sky was painted with the colors of the setting sun. She felt a rare sense of peace, one that had been absent from her life for years. "You have changed more than just the palace systems," she said softly. "You have changed the way I see my world and myself." The human looked at her calmly, his eyes reflecting sincerity. "I did not mean to change you," he said. "I only acted as I knew how, but perhaps in doing so you saw something different, a way to value yourself and others beyond what tradition dictates." The princess nodded slowly. "I have," she admitted. "For the first time, I believe that I am worthy, not because of a trait I was told to have, but because of who I am, and I see that others can be worthy too if they choose to act with courage and heart." The human smiled faintly. "Then perhaps the real challenge is not surviving storms, but teaching others to see value where they did not before." The princess laughed softly, a sound that surprised even her. It was light and free, a stark contrast to the tension that had filled the palace for so long. She realized that the presence of this human had done more than save the palace. It had opened her mind, her heart, and her eyes to a new way of thinking. She felt hope, excitement, and determination all at once. For the first time, she imagined a future where her choices mattered, where she could act according to her own judgment, and where she could find someone who respected her fully. As the stars began to twinkle above the palace, the princess and the human walked quietly, side by side. The palace lights shimmered below them, and the distant hum of ships marked the continuing life of the empire. The events of the day had tested courage, intelligence, and character in ways that no ceremony or ritual ever could. And the princess understood that in the human officer she had found a being whose actions had spoken louder than words, whose heart had proven stronger than appearances, and whose mind had challenged the limits of her world. The court had witnessed the extraordinary. The emperor had witnessed it, and the princess, for the first time in her life, had felt truly seen. She knew the path ahead would not be simple. There would still be resistance, questions, and doubt among the nobles. But she also knew that she was no longer powerless. With the human officer by her side, she could face the challenges of her society with courage, wisdom, and hope. And somewhere in that quiet night, under the vast expanse of the stars, the princess felt the quiet stirrings of change, not just for herself, but for the entire empire. A new story was beginning, one where worth was measured not by status, power, or birth, but by action, character, and courage. And the human, who had entered her world as an unexpected visitor, had shown her the way. The day dawned bright and clear over the imperial palace, but the air was tense. Word of the human officer's actions during the storm had spread throughout the empire. Nobles who had once scoffed now spoke in hushed tones of respect, though some still grumbled about tradition. The emperor held court early, calling together the most influential members of the council. The young princess stood beside him, her heart steady but alert. She knew this day would be decisive, not just for her but for the future of her people. The emperor spoke first, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "This human has proven courage, intelligence, and honor beyond what I expected," he said. "He has acted without thought of reward, saving the palace and the lives of our people. Yet he is not of our species. The court must decide whether such a being can be considered for the hand of a princess." A murmur ran through the assembly. Some nobles whispered excitedly, while others shook their heads in disbelief. One tall, green-skinned noble with 4 arms rose and spoke sharply. "Your Majesty, this is unacceptable. Tradition must guide us. A human is not of noble blood. They cannot serve as a suitor for the princess. We risk dishonoring our empire if we allow this." The emperor listened patiently, then gestured to the human officer. "You have heard their objections. Speak if you wish." The human stepped forward. His movements were calm, deliberate, his eyes fixed on the princess. "Your Majesty, honorable nobles, I do not seek to dishonor your traditions. I do not seek power, titles, or advantage. I ask only to be judged by what I have done and who I am. I do not claim that my species is superior, but I do believe that courage, honor, and integrity know no boundaries of species or blood. If the princess and I find understanding and partnership, it will be because we value each other's character, not because of ritual or appearance." The chamber fell silent. Even the harshest critics could not deny the truth in his words. He had acted decisively during the crisis, saved lives, and conducted himself with humility and courage. The young princess's heart beat faster. She had seen him act not once but repeatedly, guided by intelligence, empathy, and determination. For the first time, she realized that the opinions of nobles, traditions, or customs mattered less than the reality of who a person truly was. A respected elder of the court stood next. "Perhaps we have been blinded by our traditions," he said slowly. "We have valued appearances, birthright, and rarity of traits, but we have ignored courage, intelligence, and compassion. This human has demonstrated qualities we have long failed to see. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our measures of worth." Other nobles began to murmur agreement, though some still resisted. The princess felt a small smile rise to her lips. Change had begun. She stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. "I have observed this human not because I was curious, but because he has earned my attention. I have seen him act without fear, without expectation, and without selfishness. He has proven himself in ways our customs cannot measure. I choose to trust him and to value him not for his species or birth, but for his courage, character, and heart." A stunned silence followed. Some nobles gasped, while others struggled to maintain composure. The emperor studied his daughter with pride and amazement. She had made her choice boldly, speaking for herself for the first time. Her words challenged centuries of tradition, yet they rang true. The human officer's face remained calm, but the princess noticed a faint glimmer of relief and gratitude in his eyes. The council debated quietly for some time, weighing tradition against the undeniable truth of the human's actions. The emperor's voice finally broke the silence. "If the princess has made her choice, and if the human officer has acted with courage, honor, and integrity, then I see no reason to forbid this union. Let it stand as a testament to the values we have long neglected: bravery, wisdom, and compassion." Even the most resistant nobles could not argue with that. Slowly, one by one, they bowed their heads in acknowledgement, their murmurs fading into respectful silence. The decision was made. The human officer would be allowed to court the princess freely, not as a political tool, but as a partner of mutual respect and trust. The young princess felt a mixture of relief and joy. For so long, she had been measured by traits she did not possess, judged harshly for qualities she could not control. Now, for the first time, she felt truly seen and valued. She turned to the human officer, and he stepped forward, bowing slightly but with no false humility. "I am honored," he said simply. "I do not seek your approval or favor, but I will respect and cherish the trust you place in me." The princess extended her hand to him. It was a gesture of partnership, equality, and mutual respect. He took it firmly but gently, and for a moment the world seemed to stand still. Nobles watched in quiet awe as the princess and the human officer stood together, a symbol of a new understanding, a bridge between species, and a challenge to old prejudices. In the days that followed, preparations for a formal courtship began. The human officer did not seek grandeur or ceremony. He focused instead on learning the customs of the empire, understanding the responsibilities of the princess, and earning the trust of those around him. His actions continued to demonstrate humility, intelligence, and courage. The princess remained by his side, guiding him through the complexities of the court while learning from his example. Other humans, who had been previously underestimated by the empire, began to gain attention as well. Observers noted their resourcefulness, compassion, and courage in situations that aliens had once considered trivial. The human officer's success became a symbol not just for the princess, but for the potential of humanity as a whole. Meanwhile, the young princess found herself growing stronger. She spoke openly in court, challenging outdated assumptions and advocating for action based on wisdom and justice rather than ritual alone. Her voice, once timid and uncertain, carried authority and respect. She had learned that true leadership was not about wealth, titles, or appearances, but about courage, fairness, and understanding. One evening, as the sun set over the palace gardens, the human officer and the princess walked quietly among the flowering trees. The air was warm, the sky painted with the colors of dusk. "Do you think they will ever fully accept me?" the human asked quietly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The princess smiled. "Acceptance is not given, it is earned just as you have earned my trust and respect. Many will resist, but your actions have shown them what true courage and integrity mean. They may never fully understand humans, but they cannot deny the truth of what you have done." He looked at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "I did not act to impress them," he said. "I acted because it was right, and yet knowing that it has changed your world, that is a reward beyond any I could imagine." The princess reached out, resting her hand on his. "You have changed more than my world," she said softly. "You have changed me. You have shown me what it means to be seen, respected, and valued, and for that I am grateful beyond words." As the days passed, the bond between the human and the princess deepened. They trained together, studied together, and faced challenges side by side. Their partnership became a model of collaboration, demonstrating that respect, courage, and integrity were the qualities that mattered most, regardless of species. News of their alliance spread throughout the galaxy. Other species began to reconsider their own prejudices, questioning the rigid hierarchies and traditions that had long dictated alliances and marriage. Humanity, once underestimated and dismissed, had shown that strength lay not only in physical might or status, but in character, courage, and wisdom. On the day of the formal recognition ceremony, the emperor stood before the court once more. His voice resonated through the grand hall. "This union is more than a marriage. It is a symbol of a new era where worth is measured by courage, intelligence, and compassion rather than birth or rarity of traits. Let this be remembered as the day when understanding and respect triumphed over prejudice and fear." The young princess took her place beside the human officer. Their hands clasped, their gazes met, and in that moment the entire court understood the significance of the bond. It was not merely a political alliance, but a union based on shared values, mutual respect, and the courage to see beyond appearances. As the ceremony concluded, applause echoed through the hall. Some nobles clapped hesitantly, others with full enthusiasm, but all acknowledged the human officer's deeds and the princess's wisdom. The empire had witnessed the triumph of true character over shallow judgments, and the lesson was clear. Courage, integrity, and empathy were the highest measures of worth. Later, in the quiet of the palace gardens, the princess looked up at the stars. She felt hope and determination, knowing that the future could be shaped not by fear or prejudice, but by the values she now embraced. The human officer stood beside her, a steady presence, a reminder that true strength came from the heart, mind, and actions. For the first time in her life, the princess felt truly free. She had chosen for herself, seen for herself, and discovered a new path. And in the human officer, she had found not only a partner but a guide to a world that valued what truly mattered. As night settled over the palace, the two stood together, looking out at the galaxy. Somewhere among the stars, countless possibilities stretched before them. Together they would face them all, guided by courage, intelligence, and the unwavering belief that worth is defined not by birth or tradition, but by action, honor, and heart. The empire had changed, the court had learned, and the young princess had found her place, not defined by what she lacked, but by who she was and by the human who saw and valued her completely. The future was uncertain, but it was bright, full of hope, respect, and the promise of a new era where humanity's true qualities were finally recognized. And so the story of the princess and the human officer became legend, a tale not of conquest or power, but of courage, understanding, and the enduring strength of humanity. Their bond marked the beginning of a new age, one in which the galaxy would learn that true worth cannot be measured by tradition or appearances, but by the heart, the mind, and the courage to act for what is right.